Welcome back to KTN Weekend Prime. This is The Other Kenya, and on The Other Kenya tonight we're discussing amendments to the Statute Laws Miscellaneous Amendment Bill 2015 that could have far-reaching effects in the structure of the National Police Service and the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, especially that authority, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. According to some in India, in IPOA, you might as well just strike off the I and just call it the Policing Oversight Authority after this amendment. Of course, my guest this evening is Vincent Kiptoa, member of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority Commission. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Now let's get straight into the problems that you have with this Statute Laws Amendment Bill 2015, specific to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority Act. We don't have it on graphic, but I'll read an abridged version of the amendment. A chairperson or member of the board can be removed by the president, not by the Public Service Commission, which is what is currently the law. And the removal process of the chair or a member had a number of prerequisites, and the Public Service Commission was supposed to handle all of these. All of those have been struck off. Tell me, apart from the obvious, what problems do you see here?
The key thing with these amendments are that it goes into the independence of the authority. In fact, to a large extent, if we were to make such an amendment, then it would better be we remove the whole idea about independence. The whole idea about independence of institutions is premised on the fact that the governors or the people who are tasked to manage that institution must first have the necessary powers. They should also have security of tenure. The other thing is that these institutions should have the necessary resources and the necessary institutional arrangements, including the law, to ensure that they are independent. Now, this amendment targets that security of tenure, and it actually takes away the independence and gives it to the whims of the president. So our greatest challenge, and which I think we are asking the public, members of the public, members of parliament, is that they need to restore back, to take back what the executive wants to take.
All right, security of tenure may be one thing, but experience, especially specific to policing in this country, is something that has caused quite a bit of the Interior and the National Police Service, pointing at the IPOA as having members of that commission that don't have requisite experience in policing. Your background isn't in policing. The chairman's background isn't in policing, and a number of other people do not have that background. So how then can you give oversight to the police?
Yes, I think the way the Independent Policing Oversight Authority was set up meant that those members who are supposed to be the commissioners or the board members have certain experiences which enhance the whole process of policing. The National Police Service Commission is largely a police background institution. It's an institution where you need a wealth of experience in the police. To a large extent, you can say it's an appendage of the police. The whole idea about policing oversight depends on the fact that it is the civilians, the civilians who are supposed to be policed, the civilians who have a social contract with the government need to have power to ensure that they are governed in a manner that meets the standards of the constitution, it meets the human rights standards, and it protects the entrusted power. Let me say that the power the police exercise is not ordinarily power which they have by right. It's power bestowed onto them by civilians. So the whole idea about civilian oversight is to ensure that civilians have a role in how they are policed.
Critics would mention the fact that we're in a very unique situation right now as a country. We're facing the existential threat of terrorism and other threats to our security, to civilian security, that perhaps civilians do not have the requisite knowledge or understanding to deal with in terms of oversight at a time like this, special circumstances requiring special experience from the police? So I'll just go back to that question again. Given the circumstances that we're in as a country, do you still think that there's a need for civilian oversight?
There is still a very big need, and I don't want to look at the experience. The board members of IPOA have a lot of experience in policing. Personally, I have a background in the Anti-Corruption Commission for the last 12 years. Part of that time, I spent about 3 years in the Anti-Corruption Police Unit. The other members have experience in human rights. The chairman has a wide span experience. In fact, he was part of the team that looked at policing, the way policing can be improved. And there is a lot of work which was done by the Ransley, if you've heard of the Ransley report.
Yes.
So besides that, policing has actually conceived initially was that policing is about the people.
Yes, but in these extraordinary times when we are facing terrorism, terrorist threats, perhaps the executive and other members of the government would want less encumbrances to be able to deal with terrorism as they see fit, whether or not this affects human rights of the public.
Yeah. No, the independent policing oversight is very much alive. And in fact, we have a lot of capacity, and we understand the circumstances. We understand the roles the police are playing, and the police are doing a commendable job. The only thing is that the police are not necessarily licensed to infringe on people's human rights.
Yeah.
Whatever the situation, and world over, the police have the necessary machinery. The laws, even in Kenya, are sufficient enough to ensure that the police are able to counter terrorism, and they are able to counter all the other crimes. To a large extent, in this country, we have there are many other crimes, which are more of a challenge than even terrorism. But terrorism, of course, is the current thing.
Yes,
it is the argument
because of the nature of the
the nature of it, because of the public attention it brings. But there are deep, serious crimes. There are so many. There is so much crime. For example, in the drug dealing. There's a lot of human trafficking. All those are risks which the country are facing, which have a more serious consequence, and they have a relationship with terrorism.
And a bearing on the mandate of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Let's go back to those amendments, removing the Public Service Commission from the role of removal of commissioners, members, chairman. What do you think is motivating this?
In fact, it's not just the public service that plays a role. There is the National Assembly, which is involved in the process of recruitment. Then there is the role, of course, the president plays. The risk it has is that the president can wake up today, and if he doesn't feel very well, or if he doesn't feel well predisposed, he can decide he doesn't need the chairman.
Yeah.
And by that stroke of pen, you will find that he can change the whole board of the Independent Policing Oversight.
Recentralizing of power, it would seem. There's also amendments in the same statute laws, miscellaneous amendments bill, that affect the National Police Service itself, and perhaps we saw a prelude to this with the removal of Grace Kaindi. Section 17, the President may remove or retire or redeploy a Deputy IG at any time before the IG attains the age of retirement. The same is repeated for the Director of Criminal Investigations in Section 31. How come we're not hearing enough about this from IPOA? Because this also interferes with the independence of those officers serving at the top echelons of the police service.
The police, to a large extent, are part of the executive. In fact, besides serving the public, they're supposed to implement. They're supposed to effect. They are actually supposed to contribute directly to the implementation of the manifesto of the party in power.
Yes.
Now, to that extent, there is a closer relationship with the executive, unlike IPOA, because IPOA has a closer relationship to the public. Safe to, that IPOA also protects the police. It investigates complaints against the police and to a large extent, but to a large extent it's a civilian agency.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to implementing the manifesto and taking the responsibility the president has for members of this country, then he probably needs some discretion. Now, that discretion should be within a context of security, because the people who are the IG or the deputy IG or even the director criminal investigation, ordinarily they are supposed to be professional to some level.
Yeah.
So the law should give them some level of some leverage where they're able to act independently. Now, their interferes with that independence.
Yes.
And we are not necessarily very comfortable with that as IPOA.
But the relationship is being closer with the executive. It is not something that you'll fight too hard over. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this evening, Mr. Vincent Kipto. Thank you very much for joining us on KTN Weekend Primes, the other Kenya. Loads that we could talk about, including the sacking of 63 officers. In fact, I just want to ask you that, good or bad, considering the widespread crime that we've seen, good or bad?
No, it's good. It's positive.
All right.
Positive for this country. I think that is what the National Police Service has done, which we are happy with.
All right. Unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to end it. Thank you very much for joining us nonetheless on The Other Kenya this evening. Of course, you've heard what kind of amendments are being proposed in the National Assembly to change the nature of the firing, or rather the process of firing or letting go of the chairman or a member of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, interfering directly with that independent mandate of the IPOA, according to members of the IPOA. Take a look at that law and get your views heard with respect to that. KTN Weekend Prime continues in a moment. We've got lots more news, so don't go too far, including sports news, lots of development, especially from the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup. Stay with us.